place, but the ancient Greeks, when they first arrived here, thousands of years. It all began about 2,750 years ago, approximately, when the first Greeks arrived on the island, coming from Corinth, the city-state near Athens, and they founded a small colony south of modern Corfu at Canoni, where we're going now. So we're going to see the ruins, some ruins of this ancient town soon. And this small colony they founded grew fast because of commerce. Like I said, being between Greece and Italy helped. So in less than 100 years, the small colony became a city-state on its own, got its independence, and eventually became one of the largest and wealthiest city-states in Greece proper. Even founded its own colonies across the sea, where nowadays is the Albanian coast. By the way, if you look on the left, you will see the name, the Greek name of the island, Kerkyra. Kerkyra Lines is one of the local terms of ferries, and there's Kerkyra Seaways as well.
Say the name again?
Kerkyra, K-E-R-K-Y-R-A.
Right.
That's that. So, ultimately, of course, the island followed the fates of the Republic of Venice from the 14th to the 18th century. And that's how Corfu was never under the Ottomans, under the Turks. He conquered the rest of Greece and most of the Balkans at the same time. Because Venice invested a lot of money here, including this fortress here, with running in its ditch. This is what we call the new fortress, because it was built in the end of the 16th century. And that's about 1,000 years after the first works of the old fortress we are going to see later. So compared to the other one, this here is new. And it served its purpose during the fourth and last Ottoman attack on Corfu, about 300 years ago, when the Ottomans launched their final attack. The furthest they would make it was this bastion here on our left, but the locals with a counter-attack repelled them, causing a lot of casualties, and that was the end of the Ottoman expansionism to Europe. Now, of course, nowadays we have much more peaceful activities here, like the open-air market on our right-hand side, where the locals get fresh vegetables from the farmers and fish from the fishermen. Anyway, the end of the Venetian rule came with the Napoleonic Wars, when Napoleon the Great's armies were conquering Europe. He took over as well for a few years. Then the French came again. It was a turbulent period for 17 years, from 1797 to 1814. But ultimately, Britain prevailed, and the Napoleonic Wars were followed by 50 years of British. Now, this area here was the first expansion of the old town, because Corfu was fortified, was surrounded by a wall and more fortifications. But by the mid-19th century, there was not much danger anymore, especially under the British. So the local authorities demolished some of the fortifications here to let the town expand. And by that we are at the Garitza Bay, with a beautiful promenade by the sea, very popular for the locals to exercise in the morning or enjoy long strolls in the evening. Very popular for yachters and sailboats. Although Corfu has the largest marina in Greece, it's not enough. And this place is privileged because people have easy access to the city, without getting caught in the traffic. And beautiful view of the old fortress was behind us. We're gonna see that on the way back after Canoni. On weekends and even in the winter, it's a very popular place. That's why it was one of the first which developed a tourism industry. 1970s or 80s, there were just a few Greeks who owned a car. So imagine what is going to come later. Anyhow, all the way back towards the town now. We're going to pass by the center of the ancient town again. This time we have the ruins of the church on our left hand side. The church was a beautiful three-aisled basilica originally, dedicated to Virgin Mary, which stood on its site for about 1500 years until it was destroyed by the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, in 1943 during the Second World War. On the right hand side of the road, we're going to see again the ruins of the Roman bath. Right after the bath, we're going to see the entrance of what we call Mon Repos. Mon Repos is French and means my rest. It's an estate with a villa, and the name was given to this place by the Greek kings, the Greek royal family, because this villa was originally built by the British governors in the 1830s, but after the union with Greece, it was used by the Greek royal family who were spending their summer holidays here until the end of the 1960s, when monarchy was abolished. And that's why this place there is the birthplace of Prince Philip, the late Duke of Edinburgh, the father of the current British king. Philip was born there in 1921, originally as a Greek prince. However, he did not spend much time here, because a year and a half after his birth, in 1922, his father and the whole family were exiled from Greece due to some political issues, and they fled to France, to Paris. Then after a few years, the family was dismantled. The mother, Alice, developed schizophrenia and was hospitalized in Switzerland. His older sisters were married to German aristocrats in Rothschild villa. The Rothschilds, the bankers, have a villa at the northeast coast of Corfu, and they say that it's there that Charles proposed to Camilla. So we just passed by the ancient town center, and here on our right hand side is the entrance of Demi Moore, Willem Dafoe, Bruce Willis, Michael Douglas, just to mention a few Hollywood stars. Now around the turn here, we're back at the Garitza Bay, and we have a great view of the older fortress on our right hand side. So after the Corfu in Greek means the town of the hilltops, the town of the peaks, and later the Venetians pronounced it Corfu, and as the Italians used to, it's the most bombed town in Greece. More than 190 air raids took place here by everyone: the Italian Air Force, the German Air Force, the Allied Air Forces, and they destroyed a lot. The fortress was heavily bombed because that's where the local garrison was stationed, so there are not many buildings anymore, apart from a few, just like the one which looks like an ancient temple. It's not, of course, was originally built as an Anglican church dedicated to St. George, but after the union with Greece it was converted into a Greek Orthodox one. That's where Prince Philip was baptized, originally Greek Orthodox. And the lighthouse at the top, well, that's one of the first lighthouses built in Greece, actually the first, by the British in the 1820s. And that's a good example, actually, because being under Venice and later Britain means Corfu was much more developed than the rest of Greece and the Balkans, at least up to the end of the 19th century. And therefore, Corfu has many firsts. The first lighthouse in Greece, the first bank in the Eastern Mediterranean, the first school of arts, the first university, the first theatre in the Balkans, and so on. And for the same reason, Corfu has produced so many influential people, like writers, artists, musicians, and politicians. mostly back then when the politicians were good. Now, we're almost there. At the drop-off and pick-up point for the buses. George, the driver, is going to drop us off right in front of the old fortress. Then we're going to have a guided tour, a walking tour together. Just at the center of the town, we'll show you the most important landmarks back in the 1930s. And later became writers. They wrote books about Corfu, especially Gerald wrote My Family and Other Animals. Funny, we got their independence, but the first prime minister they elected was from Corfu because he was very well educated and had already a brilliant career as the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Russia. Further down the street is the house of the national poet who wrote a poem about the Greek War of Independence, and another local 300 years ago. We used to have one of the largest Jewish communities in Greece until the Second World War. But while Corfu was under the Nazi occupation, 2,500 people were deported to Auschwitz and only a few survived. Now there are just 65 Jewish in Corfu. Still on our left-hand side, there is the main gate of the fortress with the lion of St. Mark above it guarding it. Tradition has it that there were 1,000 of those stone lions guarding Corfu, an expression to show how well our troubles too, so they go away. And that's probably the reason why in this country we have so many restaurants and yet so few therapists. You have seen my big fat Greek wedding? Now driving by the port, see the ferries connecting Corfu with the mainland Greece. There's the closest port is about 8, and in the summertime there's connection with a few Italian ports like Bari, Brindisi and Ancona. Apart from the ferries, you can see one of them here on our right hand side, excuse me. These hydrofoils were built in the Soviet Union originally in the 1970s, originally for the rivers. But they're as good for here. Now, about 1 million people use the port every year, with the ferries I mean, and another 800 or so every year. We have a rather mountainous terrain, like most of Greece and the Balkans. As a matter of fact, as the whole of South Europe. And the highest mountain is Pantokrator, which means Jesus the Almighty. There's a monastery at the top, that's why it's skyline down to the right. That's the northeast coast of the island, across which only 1.5 miles away is Albania. And you can see the southernmost Albanian town, Saranda. Now the shape of the island is like a crescent facing east. So from north to south it has a very wet climate. Actually our climate is not exactly Mediterranean, it's rather subtropical, with high temperatures. Even in the winter the lowest average is no less than 8 degrees Celsius, which is about 45 Fahrenheit, for a few weeks on January. Otherwise it's higher than that. And we love partially, but we prefer our own vegetation. Beautiful sights of wild orchids, for example, grow here. So the countryside is really interesting in Corfu regarding the plants, the vegetation. Not much of a wildlife concerning mammals, on the other hand, because Corfu has a high population density. So there are just some foxes, ferrets, hedgehogs, some otters, and a couple of lagoons. Although lately we have had some newcomers like coipus and raccoons. Towards Paleogastrica. Creating small coves, secluded beaches, sea caves. The outcome of the rock composition of the area, a mixture of limestone with sandstone and schist. Schist is a rock which breaks easily, so with corrosion and earthquakes over the millennia, that's how this landscape has been formed. Now, about the name of the place, Paleogastrica, is a composite word which derives from the words paleos, which means old, and castro, which means castle, because there was indeed an old castle here, destroyed by the Normans about 900 years ago. And a few years later, I will be there soon, so we'll stop at the restaurant and let me tell you about the menu, which is included in our tour. So you're going to start the meal with a Greek salad, of course, tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, onions, olives and feta cheese. Then there will be an assorted plate, a plate with assorted Greek spreads like tzatziki and fish roe salad will be the pink color. So if anyone is allergic to seafood, please watch out for it and let the staff know. With pita bread. Then as a main course you have a selection between an option between pasticciata or burdeto. Now pasticciata is made with beef on a basis of brown onions and garlic, red wine vinegar, cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon, cumin, bay leaves, tablespoon of tomato paste. It's very aromatic, not hot, just aromatic, served with pasta. Burdeto, on the other hand, is made with fish and is a little bit spicy, not much. As a dessert you have yogurt and of course water and wine are included. Meanwhile we have reached the west coast of Corfu, and if you look on the left hand side in a second you're going to see the landscape I have described with the promontories, the curves, the sea caves at the distance. Most sea caves are small, so only 1 or 2 mermaids can live there, also the fishermen say. But there are a couple of larger ones, one of which was used as a small supplying base for submarines during the Cold War from the 90s. Very popular area. They sometimes can get really crowded here. Not so much anymore. But especially in later July through August, it's really many are coming here with their own cars, which really challenging, can be really challenging. But then in the winter, Paleogastrica is more like a ghost town, because there are barely any people living here. Most of those who own businesses or work at Paleogastrica, they live at the nearby villages or Corfu town. Now, if you look on the left hand side now, you're going to see a cove called Alipa. You see how crystal clear the water is. That's the other attraction apart from the landscape. Palivastritsa is ideal for snorkeling, scuba diving, and you can also see the small marina, which was the naval base in the past. Well, if you look after these nets here, if you look further to the left, you're going to see this rock I was talking about before, which is supposed to be the petrified ship which had taken Ulysses to Ithaca. Left, you know, the locals really support this legend about the Odyssey, so they have given their businesses names like Nausicaa, the princess, Odysseus, Poseidon, with rafts and boats and special effects. It's something like a reenactment of this part of the Odyssey, ending up with a proper Greek feast in the end, of course. This is the cove called St. Spiridon's on our left hand side, named after the patron saint of Corfu. Up ahead and on our left is Vrachos, our restaurant, and George is going to drop us off there. We're going to spend about an hour and 40 minutes almost here. Like before, you can leave things on the bus, but the bus will not stay here, it has to move to another place. So take the things you're going to need with you. You see there were pirates around, especially the barbaric corsairs from Algeria, Tunisia and Libya, raiding the South European shores and islands regularly. So people were trying to be far away from the sea. In 1978 they filmed a movie about Onassis, the Greek ship owner. At some point he was even the wealthiest, or one of the wealthiest people on earth. And the name of the title of the movie was The Greek Tycoon, starring Anthony Quinn. Onassis was actually a regular here in Corfu, because he was using the local airport to come from New York or London or wherever else he was. And then he would board his yacht, Christina, named after his daughter, to go to Skorpios, his private island further south from here. Eventually he will come here with his second wife, Jackie Onassis. He happened to love some little wild strawberries that grow on the island, which are really tasty. So for the next couple of years, Onassis used to send his private jet from New York to Corfu on every May to pick up a basket of those strawberries for her. Yeah, I mean, he had the means, but on the other side, he raised the standards for us, the common husbands, by a lot. Now, in 1981, we had this the movie I mentioned earlier at Canoni, the James Bond movie, For Your Eyes Only, with Roger Moore. Most of the movie was filmed here in Corfu. There were car chases up on the mountains roads. Actually behind this palace, originally the summer residence of the Empress of Austria. And 007 was there, of course, to play Baccarat, his favorite game. But it was there that for once 007 did not have his martini, but instead he ordered Theotoki Aspro. Aspro means white wine, and Theotoki is a local before. Lawrence and Gerald Darrow, who lived here with their family. Gerald was the youngest who had this hobby with the animals. So it was a big success. So much that a few years ago in the you can find it on the Netflix and the PBS. 4 seasons, all filmed here, broadcasted around the world. It's really funny, really enjoyable. So if you find it, I suggest you watch it. If you don't remember the name to search for it, don't worry, because if you Google British Family Corfu, it will definitely pop up first. Then 3 years ago, they filmed a part of My Big Fat Greek Wedding #3, and Binoche the Durs. Last year they filmed another movie about Onassis. It's called The Birthday Party with Willem Dafoe. It's more about his relationship with his daughter. Because there were regular outbreaks of cholera and plague in the Ottoman Empire across the sea, spreading to the Venetian ports like Corfu with commerce. And so on those occasions the authorities will force the income from the Italian word for 40, quaranta, we got the word quarantine. You can also